you point out, don't digitize everything.
Right.
And I think, when everyone talks about digital transformation, the first instinct is, well, let's just go in and take all the paper, run it through the scanner, digitize it all, put it in the cloud, put it, where it can be accessed. And I think when you drill down into, how do you get from here to there, and really kind of play through the scenario, you don't want to digitize everything because, as we see in our industry, you send a box off to storage, only a certain percentage ever comes back and needs to be accessed. Even with the in-office, more active information, you don't need to digitize everything because you're keeping around because you think you may need it. Only a certain percent will really be accessed. So the other key point you mentioned is the index. That original notion that we put a barcode on a file and we put metadata on the label and we can search on that metadata. Well, if you have an index down to the file level, you can put the physical data wherever you want it, because as soon as you request it, then you digitize it, bring it back, make it accessible. And if you don't end up requesting it, we'll let it kind of age out, apply that governance that you talked about, and save that cost and investment to digitize. So that's something we become very conscious of as we kind of help actualize this in the market.
So take that concept. So during the pandemic, we've had this, and coming out of it, we've had this some great conversations with clients, and a lot of them, and a lot of people on this call probably worked through this, in the career like we have, and have been working through this for years. And a lot of our clients have been, look, this is, it takes a village, and it's a journey, right? And the idea is, it's okay to be on a journey, but let's have a destination, right? Yeah. Because there's a little bit built into that logo and pictures we show for FileTrail, because we want to take you on that journey. But we have a destination there for that. And one of the things that you talk about, like, you don't have to digitize everything. And if you have the metadata and you have the indexing and everything, you also get rid of that fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which a lot of people don't think about. But there's a lot of users that, I'm just going to put it at the box level. We just want to get it off this expensive real estate, and ship it off, and it's old stuff. And then all of a sudden they're requesting 50 boxes back because they don't know where the item is. And they can't put the finger on the one that would just be simple to say, hey, just image that for me. Okay. Yeah. That's easy. And it impacts the life cycle of that too, because you don't have that policy wrapped right tight around that document type where you can say, hey, I can push this button easily and have it go away, right? So that journey that a lot of people probably on this call have been on, is now, and I'm going to plug FileTrail a little bit, because just the other day I just had the CIO come up to me and say, we knew this existed. We knew it could exist, but you guys just showed us that it does exist. So it's a little bit of that visibility across all of the repositories that we're sucking in document types from a DM or file shares and metadata descriptions, or using crawler tools to get close enough and indexing those, and then having the physical stack. So you can make that decision, right? Hey, this isn't in any of my repositories. It's still in, everybody needs to think of paper today as just another information repository, but it's physical. Right? It's a legacy stack of information, and that's physical. So if you have good metadata around that, you can see it, and that makes it easier. Just like when you in our system, you can see across all these repositories, and if you can view it too if you want to from ours, or you could view it from the DM and see the physical, vice versa, right? But the point being is that if you can see that in the physical, and it's not in a repository today, you can say, hey, put that in an electronic form, so it's in this repository, and it'll stay in this legacy information stack too. but that's going to quietly sit there and go away, right? Unless it's a permanent file and, really critical around that, there's always going to be paper. We all know that. Nobody can, it's existed since, before time, so it'll always be here, right? There'll always be some record. So yeah, we have a little story. We have a client that's it's a council in the UK, and when they were implementing our system, I said, well, and they were talking about the disposition life cycle and their policies and stuff, and I said, so how old is some of your stuff? And they said, yeah, about the 1700s is the oldest one. So And I said, well, I guess you're never going to destroy that. And they said, no, that's not going to get destroyed. So there's all gradients of that when it comes to paper. But yeah.
For the people that are on the call that are chomping at the bit to actually adopt some of this. By the way, the statistic that we've been running with is that actually about of those active files, semi-active files, only about 25% of them will need to be retrieved and actually imaged. We'll see if it proves out to be true, but that's roughly the number we're expecting it. But for the people that are chomping at the bit, we also have to realize that there has been this change management that's happening to us because of the pandemic. So attorneys, for example, are so reluctant to change, so reluctant to give up that hard copy, that paper copy. And the pandemic has actually forced them to realize, wait a minute. And if you'll talk to some of our clients or some of the people on this call that are with larger law firms or some of the guests that we've had in the past, they've said, you know what? One of the things that really surprised us is how much attorneys were willing to embrace receiving an electronic version of their documents because it was so much more convenient to receive it at home. And then once you make it electronic, there's so many more things you can do with it too, in terms of exchanging it and annotating it and doing all kinds of, searching, all those kinds of things. So it's the change management is happening for us, I guess, is the point I'm making. And it's pretty exciting to see that we are really at the cusp of something that could really finally get us to closer to a full digital than before.
And John, a lot of the things that forced this, right, was, Zoom meetings, and then you get Teams, and everybody's working in Teams now, and now you start seeing data going into Teams, right? And they're exchanging data and things like that. So people that, would prefer the face-to-face, were forced to shift that, and now seeing that data can flow and shared, easier. It's so interesting talking about Agile records management, because as soon as this started happening, we were contacted by so many of a large part of our businesses, law firms, and we were contacted by so many of our law firms saying, hey, do you have a connector to Teams? Because data's starting to go into Teams, and we need to manage that data and to make sure, when all of this comes out and we're back in the office, we don't forget that what's in Teams, right? So we built out a Teams connector there, but that's kind of the agile thinking of like, okay, what's getting created? How are we making sure that we're going to be managing that? And from that transformation of being forced to be remote, we heard the same thing. We literally heard the lawyers are liking that they can get it on their screen. A number of firms were still afraid that they're getting on their screen and then hitting the print button at home, which is one of the things. They're like, okay, we got to make sure that Bill doesn't have a stack of boxes now in his garage, that when they come back or sue, so it's kind of an interesting to see that.
I was just going to ask
when we had Richard Hogg on the call, he's with White and Case, and he basically said that he was actually surprised that the attorneys were not hitting print as much as he thought they would. Yeah. So that's actually a good anecdotal example, at least, that it didn't actually come to fruition. Go ahead, Kurt, you had a question.
Well, I was going to say, so now as we start to have the conversation, like, John, as you announcing, CDC, opening things back up, and people start looking at, well, what's going to be in the office when we start talking about going back? We've all been kind of hunkered down watching Netflix and kind of accepting, you know, this is our new life. You know, we're all on camera. Now it's like the conversations are starting to pop up. Okay, are we going back to the office? What's that going to be like? Do we snap back to that? And you know, as we have those conversations, people aren't really saying, yeah, we're going to go back to what it was. They're talking about a hybrid model. Let's go, even with law firms, back to the office, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 days a week, kind of a collaboration space, hoteling, reduce the footprint. But it seems like it's a paradigm shift. The model has changed. This isn't temporary. The adoption has happened. People have figured out that you can work remotely, you can be electronic. So what are you seeing as, you know, the post-pandemic, you know, office and business process that we're going to go back to?
Well, I think one of it is going to be, like you said, a hybrid model, hoteling. If you read any of the large articles in the, you know, the large newspapers or anything, it's talking about that some of the largest lease spaces, office lease spaces today, are subleases from some large employers that are trying to unload the space because they don't think they're going to need it. You know, we all know that Google and Facebook all announced that you don't have to come back to the office till the end of 2022 or sometime. So all of that is you know, going to constantly change. How do we work in this environment that we're in right now, right? As we talk to everybody out there, and what does that mean to our information, and how are we going to manage that? And again, whenever I say information, I always, you know, think of that legacy, you know, information repository called physical records. So you know, how is all of that? And that's again part of that agile, you know, records management, information governance. I'm sure a lot of firms have started talking about that. Organizations say, hey, this is going to last for a while.